He was 17 when he made a promise he couldn't keep. She was the girl who believed in him when no one else did. And on a cold November night, under the glow of a gas station light, he looked into her eyes and said the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "I'll never let you down." But 3 years later, she was gone. Not because she stopped loving him. Not because she found someone else. But because he broke her in ways he didn't even realize until it was too late. This is the story of a second chance that became a final goodbye. A story about the moments we take for granted, the people we hurt without meaning to, and the painful truth that sometimes love isn't enough to fix what we've already destroyed. What happens when the person who gave you everything walks away and you're left holding nothing but regret? What do you do when you finally understand what you lost, but it's too late to get it back? This isn't just a story about a breakup. It's about the slow unraveling of trust, the quiet pain of unmet promises, and the moment when someone finally chooses themselves over the person they loved most. By the end of this story, you'll understand why she left. And you might even ask yourself, would I have done the same? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Ryan Mitchell grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. He wasn't the smartest kid in school, wasn't the most popular, but he had something people liked. He was charming. He could make you laugh when you were having the worst day. He could make you feel like you mattered. And that's exactly what he did to Emily Carter. They met in sophomore year, at a football game neither of them cared about. She was sitting alone in the bleachers, reading a book, and he sat down next to her just to see if he could make her smile. He did. And from that moment on, they were inseparable. Emily wasn't like the other girls Ryan knew. She didn't need attention. She didn't play games. She was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who noticed things. She noticed when he was upset even when he tried to hide it. She noticed when he needed space, and when he needed someone to just sit with him in silence. She saw him. Really saw him. And for a kid who spent most of his life feeling invisible, that meant everything. By senior year, they were planning a future together. Nothing fancy. Just something real. Ryan wanted to get a job at his uncle's auto shop, save up some money, maybe move to the city one day. Emily wanted to go to community college, study nursing, help people. They didn't need much. They just needed each other. Or at least, that's what Ryan thought. But after graduation, things started to change. Ryan got the job at the shop, but the hours were long, the pay was low, and the work was exhausting. He started coming home tired, frustrated, and distant. Emily was patient at first. She understood. She made him dinner, rubbed his shoulders, told him it would get better. But as the months went by, Ryan stopped trying. He stopped asking about her day. Stopped making plans. Stopped showing up the way he used to. He wasn't mean. He wasn't angry. He was just absent. And that, Emily would later realize, was worse. One night, she asked him a simple question. "Do you still want this?" He looked at her like she was crazy. "Want what?" she asked. "Us," she said quietly. "Do you still want us?" And instead of answering, he got defensive. He told her she was being dramatic. That she didn't understand how hard he was working. That she should be more supportive. But the truth was, he didn't know how to answer her question. Because somewhere along the way, he had stopped trying. And he didn't even realize it. It started with the little things. Cancelled plans. Forgotten birthdays. Nights when he said he'd call and didn't. Emily tried to talk to him. She tried to tell him how she felt. But every time she brought it up, Ryan found a way to deflect. He'd say he was stressed. He'd say she was overreacting. He'd promise to do better, and for a few days, he would. But then he'd fall right back into the same patterns. And slowly, Emily started to pull away. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she was tired. Tired of feeling like she was the only one fighting for them. Tired of making excuses for him. Tired of hoping he'd become the person he promised he'd be. One Friday night, she asked him to meet her at the diner where they used to go on their first dates. She needed to talk. Ryan almost didn't go. He was exhausted from work, and honestly, he just wanted to stay home and watch TV. But something in her voice made him say yes. When he got there, Emily was already sitting in their old booth, staring out the window. She looked different. Older. Sadder. He slid into the seat across from her and tried to smile. "Hey, you," he said. She didn't smile back. "Ryan," she said quietly, "I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me." He felt his stomach tighten. "Okay. Do you love me?" she asked. He blinked. "What? Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" "Because," she said, her voice breaking, "I don't feel it anymore." Ryan sat there, stunned. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, he knew she was right. He had stopped showing up. He had stopped trying. And now, sitting across from the girl who had given him everything, he realized he had nothing left to give her. "Emily, he started, but she held up her hand. "I'm not asking you to fix this tonight," she said. "I'm just asking you to think about whether you really want to be here. Because I can't keep doing this alone." And with that, she stood up, left $20 on the table, and walked out of the diner. Ryan sat there for a long time, staring at the empty seat across from him. And for the first time in his life, he felt the weight of what he had done. Or rather, what he hadn't done. That night was the beginning of the end. And he didn't even know it yet. For the next few weeks, Ryan tried. He really did. He called Emily every day. He showed up at her house with flowers. He took her out to dinner, told her he was sorry, promised he'd be better. And for a little while, it seemed to work. She smiled more. She laughed at his jokes. She held his hand the way she used to. But something had changed. There was a distance in her eyes now, a hesitation that wasn't there before. It was like she was waiting. Waiting to see if he'd really follow through this time. And at first, he did. He made an effort. He listened when she talked. He remembered the little things. But then, slowly, the old habits crept back in. He started canceling plans again. He started coming home too tired to talk. He started taking her for granted all over again. And Emily noticed. Of course she did. She always noticed. One night, she asked him to come over. She said she wanted to watch a movie, just the two of them. Ryan was exhausted, but he went. When he got there, she was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. She looked up when he walked in, and he could see it in her face. She'd been crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting down next to her. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at him, really looked at him, like she was trying to memorize his face. "Ryan," she finally said, "do you remember the night we met?" He smiled. "Of course I do. You were reading some boring book at a football game." She laughed softly, but there were tears in her eyes. "You sat down next to me and asked me why I wasn't watching the game. And I told you I didn't care about football. And you said, 'Good. Neither do I.'" Ryan's smile faded. He could see where this was going. "Emily, you made me feel like I mattered," she said, her voice breaking. "Like I was the only person in the world. And I fell in love with that version of you. The version who cared. Who tried. Who showed up." She wiped her eyes. "But that person's gone, Ryan. And I don't think he's coming back. Ryan felt like he'd been punched in the chest. He wanted to tell her she was wrong. He wanted to promise he'd change. But he couldn't. Because he'd already made that promise. Over and over. And he'd broken it every time. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I know," she said. "But sorry isn't enough anymore." They sat there in silence for a long time. And then, without another word, Emily stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Ryan didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the floor, feeling the weight of everything he'd lost. And when he finally looked up, she was gone. The apartment was silent. The movie was still paused on the TV. And for the first time in his life, Ryan understood what it meant to lose someone, not because they stopped loving you, but because you stopped showing them why they should stay. He walked out into the cold night air, got in his car, and just sat there. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat there, numb, replaying every moment he'd taken her for granted. Every promise he'd broken. Every time he'd chosen himself over her. And he realized something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. She didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because he gave her no other choice. 6 months passed. Ryan threw himself into work, into anything that would keep him from thinking about her. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't forget. He couldn't forget the way she used to look at him. The way she used to laugh. The way she used to make him feel like he was enough. One day, he ran into her at the grocery store. She was in the produce section, picking out apples, and she looked happy. Really happy. Not the forced kind of happy she'd been faking toward the end. But genuine. Light. Free. Ryan almost turned around and walked away. But something made him stay. He walked up to her, his heart pounding. "Hey," he said quietly. She looked up, and for a moment, he saw surprise flash across her face. But then she smiled. A small, sad smile. "Hey, Ryan." They stood there in awkward silence for a moment. And then, before he could stop himself, he said it. "I'm sorry." She looked at him, and there was no anger in her eyes. Just understanding. "I know," she said. "But Ryan, you were sorry 6 months ago. You were sorry a year ago. And I kept waiting for you to show me, not just tell me." She paused. "I realized something after I left. I was so focused on trying to make you love me the way I needed to be loved, that I forgot to love myself. I forgot that I deserved someone who didn't need to be reminded to care." Ryan felt tears sting his eyes. "I did love you," he said. "I know," she said softly. "But love isn't just a feeling, Ryan. It's a choice. And you stopped choosing me a long time ago." She reached out and touched his arm gently. "I hope you find someone who makes you want to show up. Really show up. Because you deserve that. And so did I." And with that, she walked away. Ryan stood there, alone in the middle of the grocery store, surrounded by strangers, and for the first time, he truly understood. He hadn't lost her because he didn't love her. He lost her because he didn't fight for her. And by the time he realized what he had, it was already gone. That night, Ryan went home and pulled out an old shoebox from the back of his closet. Inside were photos, letters, ticket stubs, all the little pieces of their relationship he'd kept but never looked at. He sat on the floor and went through them one by one. And as he did, he saw it. All the moments he'd missed. All the times she'd tried to reach him and he hadn't been there. All the chances he'd wasted. And he made himself a promise. Not to win her back. It was too late for that. But to never make the same mistake again. To never take someone for granted. To never let someone who loved him feel like they didn't matter. Because she gave him a chance. And he gave her a reason to leave. 2 years later, Ryan is a different man. He still works at the auto shop, but he's not the same exhausted, checked-out guy he used to be. He volunteers at a youth center on weekends, mentoring kids who remind him of himself. Kids who need someone to show up for them. He's learned to be present. To listen. To care. He's dated a little, but nothing serious. He's not rushing into anything. Because he knows now that relationships aren't about just showing up when it's convenient. They're about showing up when it's hard. When you're tired. When you don't feel like it. That's when it matters most. He still thinks about Emily sometimes. He wonders if she's happy. He hopes she is. He heard through a mutual friend that she's engaged now, to a guy who treats her the way she always deserved to be treated. And instead of feeling jealous, Ryan feels grateful. Grateful that she had the courage to walk away. Grateful that she chose herself. Because if she hadn't, he never would have learned the lesson that changed his life. Love isn't enough. Effort is what makes it real. And the people who stay are the ones who choose you, every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Ryan carries that lesson with him now. In every relationship. In every friendship. In every interaction. And he knows that he'll never take anyone for granted again. Because he learned the hard way that some people only come into your life once. And if you're lucky enough to find someone who sees you, really sees you, you hold on to them. You show up. You fight. You choose them. Every single day. Because she gave him a chance. And he gave her a reason to leave. And he'll spend the rest of his life making sure he never does that to anyone again. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been in Ryan's position? Have you ever realized too late that you took someone for granted? Or maybe you've been in Emily's position. Maybe you've loved someone who stopped fighting for you. How did you find the courage to walk away? What would you have done if you were Emily? Would you have stayed and kept trying, or would you have left sooner? And if you were Ryan, what would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this story hit home for you, if it made you think about your own relationships, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is learn from someone else's mistakes before we make them ourselves. Subscribe for more stories that will make you think, make you feel, and maybe even change the way you see the world. Because every story has a lesson. And this one might just save your relationship before it's too late.